This is the key criteria explanation video for maintaining the appearance of decorative amenity areas workbook, which is the Unit 209. So the questions briefly explain why the following maintenance tasks are carried out. So the first one would be the feeding, where we feed plants after the seed germinates. Although seedlings require very little feeding, but once the seedling starts to grow, it requires food from the compost or soil or wherever it's situated as it starts to establish. So as plants and shrubs get bigger, so do the root systems and their ability to gain nutrients from the soil. Therefore, if the soil condition is not fully structured and full of nutrients, and the soil condition hasn't very much nutrients, it requires feeding. So you can actually have a look around you in places you work, checking out the soil, but also the shrub conditions, the condition of the shrub to see if there's any disorders, and it would be probably a lot of the time down to the soil conditions, so why feeding is necessary. So we feed plants to improve plant growth, the rates of the growth, especially like where we're talking about in soil where some nutrients may be lacking. So feeding is part of the maintenance. Feeding as part of maintaining the appearance of decorative amenity areas is also carried out to improve flowers and fruit yields. So places like containerized plants need regular feeding and obviously regular watering. So on to the B of the explain briefly why the following maintenance tasks are carried out. So the watering, so on to watering. Seeds need, again back onto the seed side, seeds needs to help start germination and eventually to have structure to the actual plant and complete transpiration and photosynthesis. So photosynthesis is what plants do to create their food. They also need sunlight and CO2, but water is also needed to do this. So water enters the plant through the roots, travels up the stem to the leaves, which is where photosynthesis takes place. Once the water reaches the leaves, it evaporates as the plant exchanges water for carbon dioxide. So they also need water to absorb nutrients from the soil, which again would, as part of soil amelioration, would be the C of the briefly explain why the following maintenance tasks are carried out. So onto the soil. So soil amelioration, which really aims at improving the soil structure by digging in manure, composts, breaking up the soil, adding nutrients, air and letting in water, in which in turn helps the plant growth. It feeds the soil and improves the structure and helps retain moisture. So really an ameliorant is something that improves something. So question 2 here of the key criteria. So what is meant by unwanted plant material? So what is meant by unwanted plant material and why should it be removed? So all the time you're thinking about the areas you're working in and you're thinking around the places that you maintain in the workplace. The decorative amenity areas which you maintain for appearance. So what is meant by unwanted plant material and why should it be removed? Unwanted plant material actually is anything unwanted, usually by appearance or because of a reason. So damage, disease with pest diseases or disorders, also weeds, old plant debris, leaves, dead grass, dead plants, dead weed, grass, plant material, excessive growth, competing growth or badly pruned, grown or badly pruned so it grows not great, or it's positioned badly after it's pruned. Any sort of plant material and non-typical growth, it's all unwanted plant material, and all of these should be removed as apart from making the plant look unsightly, they increase the chance of a pest or a disease or a disorder moving in, or it's a place where it can harbour a pest or a disease taking over, or just simply harbouring them. If it's already disease, it steps up its spreading further. So weeds also are unsightly, they compete for food, water and sunlight, and as we say, places for pests and diseases just to start, which is the same for old plant material or debris like leaves and dead grass, plants or other plant material. Again, these would be all places that could harbour pests and diseases, and so it needs to be removed. As for non-typical growth, this goes back to the appearance where a shrub reverts back to being variegated, or a lot of suckers start growing, excessive growth appearing, and again it affects the appearance. But also surrounding plants, or some places it can become a health and safety issue, really, like overhanging road signs, paths, etc. The same reasons for badly positioned growth through pruning, generally growth or grown again in the wrong place near street lamps or drains. So it all has to be removed. So how should it be maintained? So describe how to maintain the appearance of decorative horticultural bedding areas. So formal bedding, the bedding displays are for short seasonal displays. Summer bedding is planted in June and lasts through to October, whilst the winter bedding or the spring bedding is planted in October when the soil is still warm and lasts through until the following May time with the inclusion of bulbs. So the formal bedding or bedding displays or carpet bedding are usually in areas where the public see or visit. And although carpet bedding or formal bedding and the bedding displays, the plants are generally grouped closely in bright colours or bold displays or bright blocks. But because of this being in the public eye, there's a high level of maintenance on these areas of bedding. And this is a massive downfall of lots of these areas because of the amount of maintenance on them, and lots of the times there's not a lot of staff. So a lot of hand weeding or hoeing, watering, feeding, deadheading are all part of the maintenance operations that need to be carried out to maintain the appearance, replacing dead or damaged or stolen plants. But also, like around the area, it would be cutting and edging grass and removing litter, dog dirt and leaves. So how should plants in containers and hanging baskets be maintained? Again, hanging baskets and some other containers like tubs are planted up sometimes with bedding, again with summer bedding or winter bedding or spring bedding. So with them being in containers or hanging baskets, there's also some shrubs and perennials, so feeding, watering, pruning, deadheading, trimming, cutting back are all part of the maintenance of these areas, but also removing leaves, debris or litter around the containers which can harbour pests and diseases. You should be checking for like caterpillars or vine weevil, green fly, so check for pests and diseases. These all need carried out to maintain the appearance of the basket or the tubs or the tub area. So regular watering with a liquid feed needs to take place, pruning to control the plant size in tubs, repairs to damaged plants or stolen plants needs to take place. Also, you've got to check the watering regular because the growing medium only holds a certain amount of water and feed, so this is why you would be feeding and watering regular, and really deadheading to promote continuous flowering. Well, what is meant by the term mixed border and how should these be maintained? So mixed borders may hold a range of plants like shrubs, annuals, bulbs, herbaceous. How should mixed borders be maintained? So they require lots of maintenance, especially weeding, deadheading, pruning, leaf and debris removing, clearing the leaves and any litter, mulching, but also regular watering and feeding. So how should wall shrubs and climbers be maintained, and give some examples? Well, you've really got to be thinking of your own workplace. Wall shrubs and climbers, how they should be maintained. Sometimes wall shrubs are mainly grown for a display of colour against a contrasting wall, or because it's a small area of ground that needs filling in, sometimes to hide a wall. So the wall shrubs are grown against the wall, although sometimes they need support. They can usually support themselves using stems or clinging onto the wall using aerial roots. So pruning, deadheading, checking for pests and diseases, disorders, maybe feeding and watering, but also mulching. Tying in for support and pruning to encourage the plant to grow into the correct shape or direction. But again, be thinking about your own place. So as examples of these could be the hydrangea, the climbing hydrangea, Pyracantha, Lenicera could possibly be, Hydrahelix. Onto the climbers, which I just went on to the next one there briefly. Onto the climbers from the wall shrubs. How should wall shrubs and climbers be maintained? So onto the climbers. A climber really is a shrub grown against a wall again, but this time it needs really something to give it a bit of support, like a trellis or other support. Climbers usually struggle to support themselves and need something to grow against, really. So supporting and tying in to encourage the plant would be tasks, to maintain it to grow in the correct shape or direction. So careful pruning needs to be carried out at the right time of year. So you'll be thinking of like clematis, jasmine. Think of the places around your work areas and places of work. So wisteria. Well, what is the right time of year to prune a shrub which is grown for winter interest? And name at least one example. So again, we've always got to be thinking of our own workplace and tasks we carry out, and which shrubs are getting pruned at which time of year and for what interest. So what is the correct time of year to prune a shrub for winter interest? Again, looking around your working areas. So shrubs like dogwood, so cornus, rubus, which is the ornamental bramble, these would be pruned in spring for winter colour, as you would need to prune these then, because if you pruned them in the winter, obviously you would be removing the attractive stems. So the right time of year to prune a shrub which is grown for winter interest is obviously the spring. So you're pruning in the spring for the winter interest of the attractive stems. Any other time you would be removing if you were pruning in the winter, you'd be removing the attractive stems. So the right time of year to prune a shrub which is grown for winter interest is spring, and examples would be the ornamental bramble or the cornus. What is the correct time of year to prune a shrub which flowers on the current year's growth? And again, name an example. So again, thinking about your workplace, the tasks you carried out. What is the correct time of year to prune a shrub which flowers on the current year's growth? Again, look around the areas you maintain for examples like Buddleia davidii and fuchsias, which are pruned in winter, as they only produce flowers on the stems that have grown in the same season. So what is the correct time of year to prune a shrub which flowers on the previous year's growth? And give an example. So again, have a look around your workplaces. What is the correct time of year to prune a shrub which flowers on the previous year's growth? So we're checking around places you maintain for areas. So you've got some clematis where they flower on the growth made the previous season. So pruning at the wrong time of year would result in no flowers. Now I remember being an apprentice and the supervisor at the time, Davy Hogarth, always used to say, if it flowers before June, don't prune. So it's a bit of a guideline. So the likes of forsythia, these should be pruned immediately after flowering to allow growth to happen, or don't prune at all really. So thinking about all these maintenance tasks we've been doing and all the tasks we've been discussing, you really need to be thinking about all the tools you've been using. So list the tools and equipment used to maintain the beds and the borders and the lawns and the plants and shrubs, containers, the baskets, the bedding, pruning. So list the tools and equipment used to maintain beds, borders, lawns, plants and shrubs, and also explain how they should be maintained. So if you're thinking about the first sort of tasks would be like secateurs, loppers, bow saws, pruning saws, even to an extent hedge trimmers, but I mean the maintenance of them would be part of a servicing sort of machines. But when you're thinking about the tools, it would be like sort of secateurs, loppers, bow saws, pruning saws. So these should be all really kept clean, handles treated, but blades kept sharp and disease free, being wiped down with disinfectant when not really in use. Forks, hoes, trowels, spades, rakes, all the sort of cultivation tools should be kept clean and again lightly oiled or wiped down from time to time when they're really not in use to stop rust. And when they're not in use for a sort of longest period, they should be sort of oiled or wiped down. Check and treat the handles, but mainly just after use of forks and hoes and trowels and spades and rakes, mainly just after the use, they should just be washed down and cleaned over and checked or reported if damaged, or replace the damaged equipment. So then you would be on to some things like sort of like knapsacks and sprayers, spreaders. Again, these would just be checked and cleaned over. Watering equipment, hose pipes, watering cans, sprinklers, again checked over and kept clean. And fertilizers, so composts and chemicals, these would all have to be kept in the original packaging and containers, locked away in a dry, cool place. So if you want, wire, stake, supports, hammers, anything that's going to be tying in, nails, wire cutters, again these would be all kept clean, dry, and in an area kept tidy.